Hi, it's Ron with Batcaddy Tech Support. This video is going to show you some of the features of your new Batcaddy cart that you may not be aware, and also give you some operational tips on how best to handle your cart. The cart in front of me is our X3R remote control, so it would have the remote transmitter. The handle has a power switch, a timer, a power light, and on the edge, a USB port where you can plug in your GPS or even your cell phone. And it can be charged off the battery. On the X3 and X4 Classic carts, it does not have this timer function. It simply has the stop-go function that works with the manual control rheostat. When you upgrade to the Sport, you add that additional feature. To power up your cart, you hit the power button, which is the white button with red, but it has to be held in until the light comes on. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 to 4 seconds. The reason for that, it's a dual function. So it needs the same with powering it off. You have to hold it in for probably 2 or 3 seconds or more. The remote cart can be also done manually or remotely. You'll primarily use it remotely. But realize that if you do start the cart from a stop manually, then the remote won't function because it's now only taking directions from the manual control, although it will stop it. Conversely, if you start your cart with the remote, you can't increase or decrease the speed with the dial. It only listens to one function at a time, either the remote function or the manual function. If you're running the manual function and you get your speed, rather than turn it back to 0 when you reach your ball, you can simply hit the power button for a second. It stops the cart, but you've retained that speed on your dial. So when you come back to the cart after hitting the ball, all you have to do is hit this again, and it goes back to the exact speed you had set it at to begin with. Saves you the trouble of turning it back to 0 and then trying to find that speed again. The cart also has a 10, 20, 30 timer feature. With the remote, that's not nearly as necessary, but you can do the same thing. If you hit the button that says timer one time, the wheels will spin and go 10 yards in whatever direction you aim it. And then at the end of 10 yards, it'll stop on its own. You don't need to follow it. Right? It's programmed to stop. Push the button twice, 20 yards, 3 times, 30 yards. A nice feature, particularly for the manually controlled carts. For the remotes, maybe not as necessary. You also have that timer feature on the remote cart itself. The cart also has, on its front wheel, a fine directional adjustment. If you find your cart starts to drift slightly in one direction or the other, there's an adjustment you can make on the front wheel and axle to adjust for that. And there's actually a whole video on how that is done. As far as some operational tips, realize that all the power is driven off the rear wheels. Thus, going up a hill, the cart will tip backwards, because that's where the power is, and even with a heavier bag, that front wheel will come off the ground. That's the reason for the fourth wheel anti-tip wheel. Of course, a non-remote cart you're already holding on to, there's no need for that fourth wheel, but for the remote cart there is. Still, you want to be careful on such a steep hill or on a day when the grass is slippery. If one wheel starts to slip, right, and the other wheel then has more traction, it'll actually spin your cart in that direction. So I suggest that going up a steep hill on a wet grass, you hold on to the cart. Same with you're going over a bridge or in a narrow fairway. It's always smart to hold on to the cart, not try to direct it from 30 yards behind. Some additional features that our later model carts have that the X3 did not. One was an adjustable handle arm or upper frame piece. That now you can loosen. And instead of having one fixed level, you can bring it as high or as low as you need, depending on what's comfortable for you. That feature is both on the X4 and X8 series. It's not on the X3 series. The X8 series also has a freewheeling mode based on an axle with a double groove. Let me slide this wheel off so you can see. The axle has two grooves to lock the wheel onto the axle and also engage it with the gearbox motor. When in full use, you have to engage it into the motor. If you have a problem and you need to freewheel, you can slide this out of, so it's disengaged from the motor, but still is locked onto the wheel, but now will freewheel. Take it out into your yard, right, and test it yourself and operate it yourself so that you get comfortable with the speeds, with how it turns, so forth. I'd also put my bag on so you simulate exactly what it would be on the golf course. And then, of course, make sure you charge your battery fully with the charge you have so it'll easily make 18 holes.